cellularly, we are born to do this. We know that if we're going to sign up to climb this mountain, that we're going to have a lot of struggles. Choose that absurdity that you see that you just are not going to stand for existing in the world anymore, and then just go, commit, and just go do it.
Welcome to Gartner ThinkCast. I'm Karen Stokes-Lockhart, and today we're diving into the world of humanitarian innovation with a pioneer in this space, Mick Ebeling. Mick, welcome in.
Thanks, Karen.
It's so great to have you here. So one of the things as I was preparing for this, I saw your philosophy or kind of mindset around help one, help many. Can you talk a little bit about how this kind of took root in your journey towards founding Not Impossible Labs?
Sure. So when we started Not Impossible Labs, it happened. We always like to say it happened on accident. There wasn't an intention behind it. It just kind of happened. And the reason it did is our very first project was for a paralyzed graffiti artist named Tony Tempt Kwan. And we created a device for him called, do we have it over here? No, I think it's in the, oh, you mean right here. We created a device for him. It's called the EyeWriter. And it's a cheap pair of sunglasses from the Venice Beach Boardwalk, a coat hanger that we duct taped to the side, and then a web camera and some duct tape and zip ties. And we did it. It worked. It was awesome. It went on and affected, all of these awards and accolades started coming in, and it provoked this whole movement that we saw that we got a chance to bear witness to of people being able to take this thing that we created for this one person, and they started using it for other people. And that's what kind of made us come to this realization of, wait a second, if you really focus your energy and focus your intentions around trying to help one person, and you try to solve that story for that one person, and then it's not solve the story, solve that problem for that one person, but then tell the story of that person as well, then it gives people the chance to relate to it. So Karen Stokes-Lockhart might not have any affinity towards a paralyzed or I'm sorry, any affinity towards ALS. I hope that you don't. I hope that you've never had ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease anyway. Great. Fantastic. So if I said to you, hey, I got this project around ALS, do you want to help me work on it? You might say, yeah. Your voice kind of goes up. How was your date? Oh, it was nice. He was a good dancer. She was a good dancer. It's, but there's like the commitment isn't there. It's not resonating with you. But if I said, hey, there's this guy and he was this incredibly important person within the art scene in Los Angeles, and he actually took and channeled that, and he was using his art to get kids out of gangs. There was a whole spiritual side of him that he was using, and I told you that maybe there's a chance that you're spiritual or religious. Maybe there's a chance that you're an artist. Maybe there's a chance that there's all kinds. Maybe you dealt with a loved one who was bedridden. There's all of these different points that now, rather than this generic ALS that you could disassociate with yourself, not because you're a mean person or it just didn't resonate for you emotionally. Now I've given you a multitude of opportunities to resonate as a human being and have empathy. And so what we do at Not Impossible is we're always looking at how we can take and encapsulate these missions of one of us wanting to tackle something, and how we can solve it, but also tell the story of that one person. And so that's what help one, help many means. And it really, what we've seen now is how much that empowers us and empowers other people to go out and actually create scalable change without being daunted by the fact, oh, I can never do something that can help people with ALS. No, just shut up, do it for one person. Do it, keep your head down, stay focused, and then tell the story. And then that has the chance to kind of resonate and emanate out.
Yeah. So kind of shrink the change and that personal connection. And you mentioned EyeWriter, which was amazing. And was also hearing a little bit about Project Daniel. And it sounds like both of these or almost all of the projects really do start out with that personal challenge, and then you kind of scale the impact.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you balance the personal, the human side of the problem solving with the technology, kind of technical challenges. Because you're right. If you came to me and asked me, I'd be like, oh, I would love to help, but I don't know how I can.
Right. So the technical challenges for us are secondary. The first
Okay.
thing that we do we first of all, we know going in there's always going to be technical challenges, because like when you start to delve into solving something that's impossible, it's not gonna be like, oh, I've got the equation. Here you go. It's
Yeah.
time for coffee. Let's go get a coffee. It's going to be inherently this kind of winding pathway and encountering obstacles many times along the way. So for us, step one for us is what we call commit, then figure it out.
Okay.
And there has to be this deep-seated reason for
Hmm.
you to want to solve it. There has to be this sentiment like, no, I can't let the world go by another day with this
Okay.
problem existing, not on my watch. Then once you have that conviction,
Hmm.
then you then delve into the practicalities of it. How do I solve it? How do I schedule it? How do I fund it? How do I, those are all the details. Those are all solvable things.
Right.
There has to be that reason, that deep-seated reason of why it must happen
Hmm.
before we get into the technical parts. Then we get into the technical parts, then revert back to Karen's question number one on help one, help many. You start to enroll and enlist other people to come on the journey with you. Like, we never have the resident expertise here.
Hmm.
We always have to outsource that and bring that in, and then or insource it. I guess we bring it in and we work on that together. But that is something where it has more to do with finding brilliant, talented people who are compelled by the story of what we're doing and they want to work on it way more than having a blueprint at the very beginning.
Yeah. And maybe to help just bring it to life a little bit more for folks, if you can tell the Project Daniel story, because I know when I watched it, it's like you want to just cry. It's so amazing, so much impact. So maybe either the Project Daniel or EyeWriter story, just to give people a little bit more flavor of what you mean.
Sure. I mean, the quick synopsis of both of them
Yeah.
are that the EyeWriter, we created this device, which was a ocular recognition device that allowed a paralyzed artist to draw again, using only his eyes. By the movement of his eyes back and forth, that moved a cursor on the screen because the web camera would track his pupil. And that allowed him to communicate, but also to draw again.
Yeah.
The Project Daniel was, we discovered and, became familiar of a story of a young 14-year-old boy who had lost both of his arms in a bombing in the Nuba Mountains, which is this region between South Sudan and Sudan. And we decided to, again, seeing the absurdity of the fact that this boy is never going to, throw a ball, feed himself, bathe himself, be able to take care of himself. How could we figure out how there's lots of people who are double amputees? How do we figure out how to make it so he could be self-sufficient? And so we set a course on trying to create a low-cost, inexpensive prosthetic solution, and we ended up launching the world's first 3D printing prosthetic lab in a refugee camp. So those two stories, I think, are the technical challenge of those. Like, I don't even know where to begin, with all the problems that we encountered. Um, you know, by way of one story, we ended up
Yeah.
3D printing the prosthetics.
Uh-huh.
And if you're familiar with how a 3D printer works, you've got a tube of plastic spaghetti that gets fitted through a heated frosting nozzle, is the best way to call it, an extruder. It heats up and then it squirts out hot plastic. You do that over and over and over again. You layer it on top of each other, and then boom, whatever you've layered on top becomes hard, and that's your device. So that's the thing that you've created.
Right.
When we were working in the refugee camp, it was so hot that the plastic spaghetti, the filament is what it's called,
Oh, yeah.
was melting to itself before it even got into the
My
extruder.
gosh.
And then we printed at night. But when we printed at night,
Yeah.
the lights of the 3D printer, what does light attract at night?
Oh, lots of bugs.
Not in the refugee camp. It attracted mini pterodactyls, mini dinosaur moths, right? These things were dive bombing our 3D printer, And it was like we'd come in and it looked like a moth, like murder
Yeah.
scene, and that they had jammed up the print. Like it was one thing after another, but we were there
Yeah.
to print a prosthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we were encountering problems wasn't even a remote possibility of us quitting, because it was about solving this problem for Daniel, who was staring at us every single morning, staring at me every single morning, being like, "What's up, ball guy? Where's my arm?
Well,
Let's go." Right. And so that really is kind of core to how we think and how we operate,
yeah.
is, from kind of pulling that thread from the help one, help many, to just overcoming all of these technical obstacles, which absolutely, that is a given. They will happen.
Yeah. And goes back to your point on commit. But such powerful stories and such amazing impact that you and your team are able to make. Which I'm sure also means there's now probably more problems than ever that are being highlighted and flagged for your team. Like, hey, is this something you can help with or do? How are you figuring out which problem or challenge you're gonna start with next?
So that question is asked a lot.
Yeah.
And it starts with us, first of all, feeling, and as you said in the question, there's tons of absurdities for us to solve, right? There's tons of
Mhm.
challenges
Mhm.
and social absurdities that need to be, changed.
Yeah. And Mickey used the word absurdities, and I don't think we've talked about it yet. So maybe talk about
Oh,
how you use
yeah.
that and then go into, yeah.
So an absurdity for us is a definition of a problem that needs to be solved, but we call them absurdities
Mhm.
when you see something and you're like, whoa, 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 hang on a second. That doesn't make sense. The world should not work that way.
Yeah.
Like no, 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 no. And there's a repulsiveness to that. There's like a repulsion. There's this, like you can't just sit by and see that happen. And you're also
Mhm.
flabbergasted, like, wait, how can the world work that way?
Right.
So that's what we call absurdities. And so when we see these things, we say, all right, should we endeavor to try and solve those?
Mhm.
And part of that process is, first, does it resonate? These problems, does it resonate as an absurdity for us? Does it resonate as something that we are thinking about when we go to bed at night? It has to have that kind of emotional resonance for us.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that some absurdities aren't valid, but we know that if we're going to sign up to climb this mountain, that we're going to have a lot of struggles and a lot of, challenges.
Mm.
So there has to be some kind of personal or emotional connection to us to get us to, persevere as we encounter those obstacles. And then from there, we put it to, we kind of, we talk about it internally as a team. And if we say, hey, this is something that's worth doing, then we say, all right, here we go. And then we just jump in.
Yeah. So it sounds like more qualitative criteria. Do you have any quantitative criteria as well as you go through that?
Our criteria
Okay.
on this is way more quantitative.
Yeah.
Part of the process, though,
Mhm.
is that once we endeavor to solve that, we'll do market research and see, is
Mm.
there something out there that already solves this? Because maybe there is, and it
Mhm.
just never really got its day in the sun.
Okay.
And maybe there's something that just needs to get a little push. What us solving the absurd, that's something that's really key.
Yeah.
Us solving these absurdities is not anchored in us solving the absurdities, right? It's about the absurdity being solved. So if there's a solution that already exists that just hasn't been scaled, or that if it was tweaked a little bit could do what we think should be done,
Mhm.
well, then let's put our effort into that. Let's get in touch with that person or that team and see if there's a way to supercharge that. That's something that's really key. Is it's about the absurdity being solved, not about the ego of not
Mhm.
impossible or me or someone on the team being able to lay claim and planting the flag and saying we did this. It's not about that.
Yeah. Which probably just kind of ties in even more to your success because people are probably even more willing to lean in and help, right? When it's that type of team collaboration and attitude and focus on truly helping solve that absurdity.
It's amazing when you give people a chance and an opportunity to use their skills and their gifts towards something that's good. It's amazing to watch what people,
Mhm.
like how people are just grateful for being able to contribute.
Yeah, I believe it. I guess if we tie all of this conversation in a little bit more to the DNA Summit keynote, I read and saw you have a really creative background in film, motion graphics, music videos, and kind of as you go to the website, you can see how all the stories are told. So can you talk a little bit more about like just how important fostering creativity is within your organization and then maybe more broadly for our audience within their organizations?
Sure. Um, are you familiar with the Peter Drucker quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast?
Yes.
Yeah, that's for us culture, parentheses, creativity, parentheses, experimentation,
Hmm.
parentheses, freedom to fail, parentheses. All of those things are, I think, what leads us to be able to do what we're able to do. And our, I think our special sauce is just that, is that we're able to generate this unabashed feeling internally about the experimentation and the process of getting there is like the broken parts, the failure. Like one of the chapters of my book is fail, 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 succeed, repeat is necessary, right?
Yeah.
We fail so much. It just so happens though that the last time we're at bat,
Hmm.
we hit the ball, right? And that's all that matters, is just that last at bat. So for us, it's really about embracing that mentality
Hmm.
so that we don't ever get caught up. But we have high standards, right? It's not about reducing your standards. It's not about reducing accountability. It's not about, it's about just though moving on and had that iterative process, which I think has contributed to us being able to do what we've been able to do. Because guess what? We have no right. There's nothing on paper says that we should be able to pull off what we've pulled off so far.
Yeah. They are absolutely some amazing feats, amazing feats. And I think one of the other terms I've heard you speak about is hacker maker. So I would love if you can share a little bit more about what that is and kind of how leaders use that to approach innovation.
So it's funny because a lot of times when you say the word hacker, depending on your audience, people are like, "Uh-oh, is this anonymous? Are they tying into the mainframe? Are they like getting my bank account and my
That's
ATM card?"
right. That's right.
Hacker for us signifies just this sentiment of whatever you need to do.
Hmm.
If and we're all hackers. So Karen, you're at your house, you're
Yeah.
hanging a picture,
Hmm.
uh, and you can't find a hammer, but you need to hang that picture. What are you going to use to hammer that nail into the wall?
I know. Could be a shoe, could be a screwdriver. Who knows? What's handy?
Whatever.
A rock from outside?
Exactly. All of those things weren't built to do what you're using it for,
Right.
but you made it work what your end goal is. That's a hacker.
Hmm.
Like plain and simple, that's a hacker. And so for us, it is about how do you use that resilience and that tenacity to figure out whatever needs to be figured out to make a solution that addresses that absurdity. That's really what it's about.
That's huge. And like when you put it in those terms, right? Brings it again back to the simple, back to the core, makes it more accessible for people.
Yeah. And hackers aren't afraid to fail either.
Mm.
Like here's an example. You're pounding that nail with
Yeah.
screwdriver and it's just not working. So you're going to grab something else. So the screwdriver failed,
Right.
the shoe failed, the wrench failed, but the rock worked.
Hmm.
Do you think of that exercise as a failure? No, the picture's hanging on the wall.
Right.
You might have some shoe marks and some rock marks on the wall behind the picture, but the picture's hanging on the wall. So ta-da, it worked. And then I think that mentality is really important. It's about that final end accomplishment. And it sounds dramatic, but just not getting into the mode of of reflecting on what's not working. It's capturing that, putting that into the pile so you don't
Hmm.
repeat it, but just getting back and not being so precious about the process.
Yeah. And as you're talking, it's almost like hackers have the expectation of failing the first time, that it's not going to work the
Mhm.
first time, but they're going to keep going.
Which is that's just not a failure. It's the iterative process. You have
Mhm.
to see what doesn't work before you can see what does work.
Yeah. So if we shift a little bit and talk a little bit about what's next, like how do you see the role of organizations like Not Impossible Labs kind of evolving as we go forward over the next decade and kind of what's on the horizon for you?
So, what we have realized is
Mhm.
that we've figured out a secret sauce. We figured out a cheat code. We figured out a recipe to baking the world's best chocolate chip cookies, right? Like
Yeah.
we figured out this recipe.
Hmm.
And we're continuing to work on projects. We're working on a whole myriad of different things right now that are really exciting and can make a really big impact on the world. But what we've realized is that it would be incredibly selfish of us if we kept that secret sauce to ourselves.
Hmm.
And what we are moving forward with, we started it in 2024, but we're moving forward in really, really big ways in 2025, is now taking what we do at Non Impossible and we've captured that into a curriculum that we can take out and work with corporate partners to teach their people
Right.
to be change makers, to be
Mhm.
people who understand now what we call the not impossible way, who now have not just a vernacular that they can use to utilize to how they approach problem solving, but they also have a tool set and that affects their mindset that gives
Mhm.
them the ability to move through obstacles that used to be considered impossible, but now are not going to be considered that way. So the Not Impossible Institute for us is a really big focus as we move forward. And that's I think what's really fun about what we do. We get to work on projects
Mhm.
and now we're going to get to those are really fun. And we have a lot of corporate partners who come to us and want us to help solve these absurdities in the world, right? To use
Right.
our own words.
Right.
And now we're going to have the ability to train the people at those companies to solve problems, not just within the company, but also to
Mhm.
look out into their communities. And it's the same muscle group,
Yeah.
right? To solve it within your company, solve problems in your company, or to solve problems and be a change maker outside in your community. It's the same muscle group. And one complement, it's like cross training. You benefit by you doing that on both sides. So that's really we're really, really excited about what that's going to look like in the future. And our vision is super clear, is
Mhm.
that we will create a legion, a global
Mhm.
legion of change makers and people who are out there who are changing their world
Yeah.
and by default changing the world.
So I saw a quote on your website from Albert Camus. And the quote, I'm going to read it, make sure I get it exactly right. But the absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. And so when I hear you talk about the absurdities and just everything you're doing, I'm like, this really tied it all together for me. So I guess to end with one more question, it would be, is there one last piece of advice that you want to give to all of us on addressing absurdities that, we may face every day?
Sure. I think it's not advice as much as it is what I would call a reminder,
Okay.
which is our entire species from the absolute beginning of time
Yes.
has struggled against things that were, quote, impossible.
Mhm.
And we needed to figure out how to eat, but we didn't know how to kill and the big woolly mammoth. And then we
Yeah.
figured out, oh, if we do it as a team, then we can do it. We've needed to stay warm, and we figured out fire. We figured out, I always joke that, our butts hurt, so we figured out a chair. We
Mhm.
got tired of eating with our hands, so we figured out utensils, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. This is cellularly, this is ingrained within us. Like, this is what we know how to do. We're wired for this.
Yeah.
So what I would say to everybody is that when you encounter things that you see right now as, quote, impossible,
Mhm.
first realize that everything that's possible today, everything I just said, at one point, that thing that's possible today was impossible. So the inverse of that is also true, which everything that is impossible today is on that same trajectory of eventually evolving, of progressing to possible.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, one, that everything is going from impossible to possible, and two, cellularly, we are born to do this. We're born to create solutions to problems. We're born to solve these things and to assist in that transition from impossible to possible. Then what I would say to everyone who's watching or listening right now would be, just get out there and see these things. And I'm reminding you that you have the ability to do this already. This isn't this like, moments of revelation. I'm just reminding you, you're already built for this. So it doesn't matter if you've got degrees or diplomas or credentials that entitle you, that say you're supposed to be able to do this. You can do this. So just choose that absurdity that you see that you just are not going to stand for existing in the world anymore. Choose that absurdity, find your one, and then just go, commit, and just go do it.
Yeah. It feels like I hear what you're saying. It feels like that. It is so inspiring to hear what you're able to do, what your team has been able to do, and what you're going to be able to inspire and kind of guide so many others through with the Not Impossible Institute that you're doing as well. So Mick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Really nice talking to you, Karen.
You as well. Thanks for listening to this latest episode of ThinkCast featuring Mick Ebeling. To learn more about Not Impossible Labs and the Gartner Data Analytics Summit, follow the links in the show notes. ThinkCast will be back wherever you listen to podcasts 2 weeks from today. In the meantime, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with a colleague so neither of you will miss it.